So that's the guilt part, and I don't think you should. I mean, I think if you're gonna fly, don't feel bad about it. Like, don't buy yourself an offset because you feel bad about it. Figure out a way to take responsibility at home. The other cultural assumption is growth. That we can actually continue to grow. That everybody else in the world wants to live the way we do. And that we can somehow accommodate growth through some blend of techno fixes. And I would argue that is false. And the last is greed. I'd be willing to consider, entertaining notions of how we can kind of manage our limited carbon budget if I didn't know somebody was trying to make money off it, right? I think there are things that we shouldn't be allowed to profit off of. I think healthcare is one of them. I think labor is another one. And I think the atmosphere, the forests, the oceans are another. So I'm making a point that it's a value proposition. So. And then the last thing I'll say is the alternative you can ask me about later is responsibility, resiliency, and living well, which requires that none of us actually live better than anybody else.
Thanks, Gopal. So when it's 7 o'clock, we have limited time. I'm going to give each speaker 1 minute, and I'm going to hold you. I'm going to time you each to 1 minute to summarize your arguments. Josh first. We'll just come down to this, Josh.
So I think that Gopal, summarized the issues well. I think that it's fundamentally down at the deep root of it. If you get down to the root of this problem of climate change and environmental degradation, it's I don't know. I think that it's greed. It's people living beyond their means, and we can't allow that system to continue. There are results of using fossil fuels here at home that are causing a lot of harm, not only at the Richmond refinery, but on the streets where we use cars. I mean, I've spent the last 3 years looking into this and looking at the research. There are low-income children who are suffering. They're being hit by cars at a much higher rate than rich children. They are able to...
That's your 1 minute.
That's my 1 minute. Wow.
Sorry.
Wow, I was just getting into that. Okay.
Quickly, I just want to describe a project I've done. There's a couple things. Just first thing is
that getting your 1 minute.
His definition of labor, I call labor human capital, so that sort of sums up our value differences. But quickly, really, and I've got a project that I'm working on in the Congo, and basically the project's protecting forests. And just to summarize some of the co-benefits that go with that project is that in the Congo, people might not know, there's a lot of people that go out and they strip the forest to make charcoal for energy. Okay, because energy is an indigenous component, which they've been doing for thousands and thousands of years using charcoal. So the problem is, if you've ever been to Kinshasa, which I have, it's a huge city that's extremely polluted by burning of this charcoal, because that's the only energy source they have. There hasn't been rural electrification. So what we're trying to do is save the forests, right? Provide other alternatives for energy that they've been using as part of their indigenous culture, right? And at the same time, what it does is the three things that it does is that by saving the forests, it protects women, because women go out in the forest to get wood for making charcoal, and they're at danger because they're out there a lot. So we've got a couple of
Tiffany.
Okay, great. So sometimes I think that the definition of offsets is not well understood by the public, so the offset definition is not well understood or misinterpreted. So I just want to point out that offsetting is a finance mechanism for funding clean energy projects and other things that sequester, avoid, or destroy emissions. It's really important. Second thing I want to say is that utilities can only use a small percentage of offsets when there's a true-up for a compliance period. They have to show their emissions, and in the regional greenhouse gas initiative, that's a 10-state initiative in the East, utilities can only use offsets for 3.3% of their total emissions. So it's a very small component. Last thing I want to say is there was an EPA study done and looking at a federal cap and trade system, and without offsets, the system would cost $600 billion more per year. So, last 2 points, they produce a real change they take emissions out of the environment, and the second thing is they're real and they lower the cost of compliance.
Gopal, 1 minute.
So any clean energy technology that requires electronic components, for example, require coltan, the vast majority of which over the last couple of decades has come through several generations of child soldiers in the Congo. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to price that or calculate that or offset that. I'm not willing to try. Nigeria, rampant gas flaring, which is totally illegal and has been illegal, which is the flaring of the gas that comes out of the ground when you're extracting for oil. They just burn it off. Now, the corporations who have been illegally flaring gas want to get clean development credit for now trapping that gas, shipping it through Benin and Togo into Ghana to fuel cyanide heap leach gold mining. At some point, we need to say, ya basta. Let's ramp down, rethink, reevaluate, relocalize, and rebuild the relationships we want to have. I would suggest that that's the kind of engagement we need to have as civil society, as social movements. That's the perspective I'm coming from, is the social movement perspective. What's politically realistic is not really that important to me right now. What's right is what's important to me right now. We don't have time to waste.
Thank you very much.